This is a story about a girl named Terry. It's about how we came to know each other, became friends with each other, and fell in love. Ernest Hemingway once said that every true story ends in death. This is a true story. Even at 62, I can remember 48 years ago and the day that I first met Terry. It's the summer of 1962, and I just graduated 6th grade. I'm with my best friend Rusty, and along with a couple of our other friends, Philip and Paul, are going to see Rusty's girlfriend, Sheila. We get to her house, knock on her door, and Sheila invites us in. She introduces all of us to her best friend, Terry. Now, I have to say that Sheila was a very beautiful girl, but when I laid eyes on Terry, I was totally blown away. She was absolutely beautiful. She was 5 foot 2 inches tall, had soft brown shoulder-length hair, and big, beautiful brown eyes. Believe it or not, at 14, I had only kissed a girl a couple of times, and that was playing Spin the Bottle. We put some records on, drank a few Dr. Peppers, and just sat around chatting. Rusty was sitting by Sheila, Phil was sitting by Terry, and during the course of conversation, I find out that Terry and I are the exact same age and have the same birthday of August 15th. As it turned out, Phil and Terry started going steady, and I remember thinking at the time how much I wanted it to be me. 2 years pass, it's 1964, and I'm in the 9th grade. A friend of mine at the time, Steve, had a Honda 125 motorcycle, and we were just riding around one day when I told him I wanted him to drive by Sheila's old house to see if she was still there, but more importantly, to see if Terry was still her best friend. We get to Sheila's house and start chatting about the first time we all met, and I casually ask if she's still friends with Terry, and she says yes. Then she gives us the directions to her house. We pull up to Terry's house and knock on the door. It swings open, and there she is, my Terry. She invites us in. When we go in, there's another boy in the house who she introduces as her boyfriend. Awkward, yes, but I didn't care. We sit and chat about what has been going on in each other's lives the past couple of years, and after a nice reunion, Steve and I say goodbye. As we're leaving, Terry comes out to Steve's Honda, hands me a sealed envelope, and tells me to open it later, then returns to her boyfriend. We pull away, and after we get out of sight, I open the envelope. Terry had excused herself earlier and was gone about 15 minutes when we were at her house, and I assumed she wrote it then. Her letter told me that she had thought of me many times over the past couple of years and had hoped that our paths would cross again. She said she wanted to talk to me sometime and gave me her new phone number. You might find it surprising, but at 16 now, I'm still a virgin and have never, ever been in love. Now I have someone that says they have actually thought of me. To say that I was on cloud 9 was an understatement. I allowed a few days to pass before calling Terry. I don't know why, really. I guess I just didn't want to appear like I was in puppy love. When I finally call her and hear her voice, it's like all the stress and anticipation of my call to her simply disappears, and we start talking. We talked for hours on end until her dad made her get off the phone. The next several days, as soon as we both got home from our schools, we would call each other. And it didn't take long before I realized our friendship, at least from my perspective, was taking a whole new direction, and the L word was cropping up in my brain. Was I in love with Terry? Was it my hormones? I really wasn't sure myself. Having nothing to compare it to, it was like I was on a completely new planet with absolutely no clue of where I was or where I was going. I borrowed Steve's Honda one day and arranged to pick her up from her school and take her home. Both her dad and mom worked, so we would have time to talk face to face without having her parents constantly hovering over us. I remember it so clearly, even today. We're sitting on her couch, just talking. Then she reaches over and takes one of my hands in hers. She takes her other hand and puts it up against my face. She looks into my eyes and tells me she's falling in love with me. Needless to say, my heart is racing like a marathon runner. My mind is whirling. And just before I think my heart is about ready to explode with joy, I tell her that I've been in love with her since the first time I saw her 2 years earlier. With that, Terry and I kiss for the very first time. This was no spin the bottle kiss. This was amazing. It was everything that Sandra Dee and Troy Donahue shared in the 1959 classic, A Summer Place. We started going steady, and even though we were in separate areas and schools of Dallas, we continued to see each other when possible and talked on the phone every day. During the year, our 9th grade, my mom meets and marries my stepfather, and I find out that at the end of my school year, we're going to move from the close proximity that Terry and I have enjoyed in Oak Cliff to a North Dallas suburb, which is well over 30 miles away. The news absolutely devastates both of us beyond words, as we had envisioned going to the same Oak Cliff High School, where we would never be apart again. A few weeks before we move, my parents leave for Las Vegas for a week, and Terry and I scheme and come up with a lie that makes both of our sets of parents think that we are spending that week at each of our best friends' house. When the time comes, I arrange to pick Terry up at Sheila's house, and we come back to my parents' apartment and stay until it's time for her to return to Sheila's 1 week later. I can only describe our first time together as something as beautiful as the scene between Jennifer O'Neill and Gary Grimes in the intimate scene at the end of the 1971 movie Summer of 42. Now, although the movie depicts a younger man and older woman, it's the absolute beauty of that very first moment together and those that would follow that would be with me forever. A few weeks later, my parents and I moved to our new home in far north Dallas. Although Terry and I talked every day, and on a few occasions I even hitched a ride to see her, since I didn't have a car at the time and we were both now in high school in different cities, local distractions slowly drifted us apart. It wasn't until 1967, during my senior year, that I reconnected with Terry again. Having my own car made so much difference. We started going steady again at a time when we both were just getting out of a relationship. We continued our romance until I went off to the Air Force. Although we had promised each other that we would get married when it was all over, the reality of long-distance relationships, especially when I began my 3 tours in Vietnam, was just too much of a burden for either of us to keep. We wrote each other a lot to start, then our letters got fewer and fewer until there was none. It was the summer of 1970. I was home on a 30-day leave from my second tour of Vietnam at Phan Rang before going to Saigon. I drove over to Terry's house to see her parents, and to my surprise, Terry answered the door. She ran into my arms, and we hugged for what seemed like hours. I came in, greeted her mom and dad, and we all sat around and rekindled old times. It was like all the distance between us had disappeared instantly. After a bit, Terry took me by the hand and we went into her bedroom. She closed the door, and after telling me she didn't know how to say it, informs me that she's getting married in 2 weeks to a guy she's been going with for almost a year. Needless to say, I'm shocked and blown away. But not wanting Terry to feel anything but happiness, I hug her and congratulate her. She invites me to the wedding, of course, but I don't go. I finish out my leave and go off to Saigon. It is 1972 now, 10 years after Terry and I first met. I'm getting out of a relationship and decide that I'm going to go by Terry's parents' house to check up on her. When the door opens, it's Terry's mom. She invites me in, and her dad joins us. As they politely ask what I've been up to, while I'm filling them in, I happen to look around the room and see a few wedding photos of Terry and her husband. A few minutes pass, and I can't wait any longer and ask how Terry is getting along. Tears begin to swell up in both of their eyes, and choked up, they inform me that Terry died of a massive brain tumor just 6 months earlier. I felt like someone had taken my heart out and ripped it into 1,000 pieces. I threw my arms around her mom and dad's neck, told them I didn't know, how sorry I was, and then completely broke down with both of them and cried like a baby. It seemed like we all wept for hours. I eventually asked where Terry was buried and would her mom and dad accompany me to her plot. As we were driving there, 1,000 memories and emotions started playing games inside my head and heart. Even though I so wanted to see her final resting place, on the other hand, seeing it would forever remind me that I would never know what it was to feel the warmth of her body against mine, the softness of her touch, the fragrance of her hair and perfume, and to never, ever be able to gaze into her big, beautiful eyes or see her smile ever again. When the movie Patch Adams came out in 1998, I bawled like a baby when the funeral scene came up. Even though Terry was always in my heart, soul, and thoughts, the rush of emotions of Robin Williams' graveside poem so perfectly described my feelings of not only that day, but every August 15th since. Terry was 24 when she left me for good. Her favorite color was pink. Beginning with the year of her death in 1972, I have put a dozen pink roses on her grave every year on our birthday. I also set up a flower trust fund to continue to put pink roses there until the end of time. Although I have loved and lost several times since then, there has not and never will be a love as intense and gut-wrenching as I had with my Terry. The precious times of our love that we shared together, she was my first, my only true love of my life, and I will cherish and love her until the day that I, too, die.